the team building. It's all about fit for purpose again, and making sure that we are bringing in highly skilled, highly intelligent people that will add a different view and a different skill set. We don't have the ability to have people who overlap, say 50% overlap. We want to be unique.
Welcome to the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast, where we delve deep into the life sciences industry and uncover effective strategies, innovations, and future trends. Your host, Axtria's Jasmeet engages highly acclaimed leaders in discussions focused on directing commercial success in the life sciences industry. Whether you're transforming your commercial success strategy or just craving dynamic discussion, this is the show for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jasmeet and welcome to the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast, brought to you by Axtria. Our goal with this show is to bring to you effective strategies, innovations, and most importantly, people who are driving improved business and patient outcomes within the life sciences industry. Our guest today is Matt Bachman. Matt brings over 20 years of experience in the insights and analytics arena at both large pharma and small biotech companies. During that time, he has worked closely with brand teams to commercialize numerous drugs in multiple therapeutic areas. These include drugs for type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular, drugs that were first-in-class and novel therapies, and also the ones that had little clinical differentiation, which presents its own set of challenges. From a customer standpoint, he has worked on commercializing drugs that targeted specialists and also the ones that targeted broad-based PCPs. He currently leads the commercial operations for Milestone Pharmaceuticals, a small biotech company launching a novel treatment for patients with PSVT. Before Milestone, Matt worked for large companies like GSK and BMS. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jasmine. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, Matt. Glad to be talking about this important topic. As I mentioned during the introduction, you have worked for very large pharma companies like GSK and BMS, and then switched to a much smaller emerging pharma company. So I would like to first talk about the transition as it relates to the commercial function. What are some of the key differences you have experienced in the two environments?
Yes, well, certainly at a small company like Milestone, we have to be a lot more nimble and flexible than you can be at a large company like a GSK or BMS. And what that translates into is when it comes to decision making and resource expenditure, just requires a lot of flexibility, a lot of changing pathways from a day-to-day basis, and just making decisions on the fly that may not have the ability to go out and test and do all sorts of pre-work before making a decision. You just have to make decisions a little bit more quickly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Matt, because in a big company, you are actually bound by the processes that have already been put in place. And then there are hierarchies, there's a decision-making process. You cannot jump around, right? But with the emerging pharma, with a smaller setup, you have to make those decisions, as you said, on the fly. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, shifting gears to your current role, you have been tasked with setting up the commercial operations function. Can you give our audience an overview of your vision and the approach you're taking to build the commercial function and the related processes?
Yeah, and this is really the reason why I joined a smaller company, because I have the ability to do this. And when I joined Milestone, I had a grand vision of what I wanted to do, obviously based off my experiences at GSK and BMS. And the idea of building it from scratch and being able to mold it in a way that can address all the future and current needs of Milestone will be important. But similar to what we were just talking about, it has to be fit for purpose, right? I think we don't have the resources of a large pharma company to go through it multiple iterations. What I've had to do is sit down with various stakeholders within the organization and really identify, so what is the must-have versus what's the nice-to-have, right? And be able to develop plans and pathways to accomplish both, because we have visions of being able to do that other stuff as well eventually. But right now, pre-launch, trying to really make it fit for purpose and scalable so that when we do have the ability to increase our scope, we can do it quickly. I think that's one of the key elements there. Just have to be able to turn on a dime or make adjustments really quickly, either growing or scaling back, right? I think you have to be able to include both options there. And so, say, making sure that you have the stakeholder feedback so you know it's fit for purpose and what is needed now versus what can be pushed off a little bit later. And then making sure that you have the ability to scale up or down as needed in the future.
And that's where the nimbleness really helps, right? Because that you talked about earlier, because one of the challenges we all face is the optimal use of resources, especially at smaller companies where there are so many competing priorities. And essentially, you have to keep the operations running and be efficient in solving for current needs. But in parallel, as you talked about, you have to set up everything in a way so it's ready to scale in the near future. So I would like to know, do you follow certain framework or construct to prioritize certain initiatives? Do you have anything from prioritization perspective that you can share?
Yeah, so I look at the prioritization process in two ways. The first is within commercial operations. What do I need to prioritize? And for just clarity, commercial operations includes everything from analytics to forecasting to market research insights to CRM, right? All sorts of different aspects there, right? And so we often are in a situation where just within commercial operations, I have to prioritize the needs of what has to happen now versus what can happen in the future. And there are certainly elements of cost associated with it. But I think the key question I ask myself is, if I do this certain task, right, or initiate this certain project, is it going to give our company the insight or some sort of capability that is more valuable 6 months from now than another path if I choose, right? And so that helps me decide whether I want to put resources behind the data management and data warehouse solution versus gaining another piece of insight from our customers externally. So I think certainly that helps there. And then the other aspect of it from prioritization is cross-functionally, right? I mean, we have to sit down at the table with the other leaders within the organization and say, okay, if I do this, right, then that takes away resources from other areas of the company. And have that same conversation of, okay, if I do this, or if I give up certain resources in order to allow another area to invest in a certain capability, which one is really going to set up Milestone for future success? And it's all about having open and honest conversations. That's one thing about a small company that you can do, maybe that isn't as politically influenced at a larger pharma. And so we are able to have those transparent and open conversations to help prioritize across the different functions.
Yeah, that is an important aspect. And as you were talking about it, I was thinking this is a difficult balancing act that you have to play all the time. And thanks for sharing your thoughts on how you're approaching this problem. Now, we all know data and analytics are critical to commercial success. What components do you want to put in place to build a foundation for intelligent and data-driven commercialization?
No, I would say first that I want to put a foundation in there that drives decision making. Now, that may include commercial decisions, and it may help include decisions in other areas, whether it's medical or some other function within Milestone. But we have limited resources as a small company. So a large company, you might have a medical insights division and a commercial insights division, right? And a medical data warehouse and commercial. So here I'm trying to build it so that we can all learn from every piece of insight and information and data that we can pull together. And I think the components have to be integration, right? It's got to be integrated across the functions. It has to be easily accessible. And so whatever solution I come up with doesn't make it valuable if people can't access it, right? And easily understand the data that they're accessing to help drive decision making. And it has to be timely, right? I think those are some key components that all will drive the decision making process, both within commercial and within other areas of the company.
And decision making, keeping it at the heart of things actually is very helpful, because that becomes your guiding post, right? When you're trying to make these decisions, is it going to help us become better and more efficient in our processes and operations? I think that's really helpful.
Exactly. We have to make sure that we aren't, for example, developing a dashboard to track something that is a nice to know, right? Everything has to be set up with in mind of what decision are we trying to make and how can we best design a solution that will enable a company to make that decision.
Absolutely. And you talk about the dashboard example, and there's so many other examples, right, where companies invest their resources, but end of the day, is it really driving a decision, or is it just showing some data points, right? As we work with so many customers, that's kind of the thing that we are trying to make sure that our insights are actually driving decisions and they're not just data points. So that's a very valid point. Now, as you would agree, one of the biggest challenges is enabling how to get the best quality of data. I think one of the biggest challenges in enabling data-driven operation is to ensure data is reliable and high quality. Do you have any mechanisms in place to ensure data reliability?
So, in full transparency, this is what keeps me up at night.
I guess you're not the only one.
Yes. We're in the process of building out a data governance system and data governance board, and making sure that everyone is properly sort of accessed, right, in terms of the data and what people have access to ensure that there's quality management and quality processes in place. And it's easy to do that right now when we're a company of about 50 employees and we don't have a lot of data coming in. But as we think about in the future, when we potentially have product on the market and now we have a larger sales force and you have to deal not only with sort of performance data, but all the data that is being exchanged between CRM and the sales force, providing stuff back to the home office, all of that is a work in progress. But we're going into it, I think, with that same sort of guiding principle of it has to be fit for purpose. It can't be overly complex, because then it'll bog down people's access to data and slow down decision making. But at the same time, we don't want to put bad data out there that's causing bad decision making. But this is one of the biggest challenges that we're going to face as we grow and expand and get more people on board and potentially have our product on the market. This is what keeps me up at night and how we effectively do it.
And I think the other factor is that just the data sets, the volume of data and the number of data sets keep on increasing every day. So just making that decision on, which data sets to onboard and how to use the data when you have that and how to make sure it's clean and it's reliable. It's going to even become more complex as we go on.
It is. I was actually in a meeting the other day with a potential partner for a particular tactic that we're exploring. And there was mention of not only the data that they're going to track or they're going to collect, plus all the data that some of their partners are going to collect. And then we have to get all of that integrated with our normal data. Right. And so, yeah, it's going to be a challenge, but this isn't the first time it's ever been done, right? And we have some really good external partners that we're working with, and we'll get it done. But this is the fun part, right, of being commercial operations as we prepare for a launch.
There are so many different technologies and capabilities that you have to put in place as you're building out the commercial function, right? From your vantage point, what are some of the must-have technologies and capabilities on your roadmap in the next few years? And I've asked this knowing that emerging small pharma, you would have restrictions on what you can do, right? So from that lens, what are some of those technologies and capabilities that you're planning to have in the next few years?
So this is where our vision will sometimes drive us to get creative. I think we certainly, like everybody else, want to have a capability that can leverage all the latest thinking when it comes to AI or even things like next best action, right, with our sales force. And certainly we want to get there, and I think we will. But being able to do that, again, we need to set it up in a way that will benefit the entire company. So if I think about something like mining open text, right, and using AI to leverage feedback that we're getting from all the stakeholders that we're talking to, that comes in just raw data, raw open text data that comes in from all the different stakeholders, right, having a capability to have some ability to mine that data and get the insights and see the themes in it so that we don't have to have some physical person reading that and trying to make sense of it. But then I think beyond that is the connection across the different data sources to help tell the broader story. That's one thing that I've experienced in my past is you can have all the different capabilities and technologies that you want, but if they aren't integrated and they aren't all pointing in the same direction, and you don't have everybody in the company using them the same way, then it can cause more harm than good. And so I think that's going to be as important as the capabilities themselves as we think about the future.
Exactly. And thanks for sharing the insights on the technologies and capabilities. Now, I want to talk about talent. And I know you talk about partners and, Axtria is also working with you on a lot of things. What is your approach to building the team and balancing the skill sets? And what is your perspective on building internal teams versus working with partners?
Great question. I think with any internal team that we build, my first question is, how is this person going to augment the skill sets of everybody else here? So if I'm hiring somebody in commercial operations, the first question I have to answer to myself, is this person providing a capability that we don't currently have? And if that's the case, then there's certainly a candidate. And we've taken the approach, right, where we want to have experts in the company and rely on the partners for some of the execution, right? So we can do a lot of the thinking and we leverage our partners to help challenge our thinking as well. But a lot of the execution is where we will partner with external companies and experts. And so I think the team building is all about fit for purpose again, and making sure that we are bringing in highly skilled, highly intelligent people that will add a different view and a different skill set, because we don't have the ability to have people who overlap, say 50% overlap. We want to be unique. But with the partners, and it is extremely critical. We've gone through a lot of processes where we will select partners, whether it's a company like Axtria, who we've really enjoyed working with on the analytical and strategy perspective, to companies that are agency of records or people even who are potentially going to be those that execute against something like a coupon program, right? Whoever the partner is, we are certainly trying to make sure that we're going through a strict evaluation process, because we need them to be experts, right? Much like Axtria in the data analytics space. We need partners who can really give us guidance on what they've seen, right? So that they've worked with companies that are emerging biopharma like us in the past and can help us with some of the thinking, but also certainly have the ability to do all the execution and challenge our thinking when it comes to that as well, so that we're in the best place and we really are, like I was saying, fit for purpose, but also providing flexible solutions in the future.
Yeah. And I really think that, as you said, not all capabilities and skills can be acquired internally, right? So I really like how you're thinking about building the team and working with partners. Now, in my last question, I want to focus on learnings. From your journey so far, can you share with our audience some of the things you learned as you help set up the commercial function for an emerging pharma company?
I would say the one lesson or the one approach that I would recommend is treat every day as a brand new day, right? Because no matter what you think, the path that you're going, certainly you can have the best laid plans, but then the next day something happens and it has to be adjusted. So I find myself, as I am developing, whether it's a market research plan or an analytical plan or a data warehouse plan or thinking about the future sales portion, developing multiple versions of it. And it can seem a little time consuming up front, but it saves a lot of time when things change, and we know they will, the ability to adapt and react quickly. And so I think most of spending more time up front in the planning process rather than getting so stuck down on execution on a day-to-day basis has been extremely helpful in the approach.
Absolutely, Matt. And thank you for sharing those perspectives. Building a function from scratch requires a totally different mindset, as you talked about, and a very balanced approach. On one hand, you have to ensure the work gets done efficiently, but on the other hand, you're constantly seeking to advance the function and onboarding new capabilities and skills. All this while our industry, and specifically the commercial function, continues to evolve rapidly. So many congratulations on what you're doing, and it's a difficult balancing act.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm confident that our audience will find the challenges and learnings you shared extremely relevant, because a lot of the innovation today is happening in the emerging pharma. So there are a lot of people who are in your situation, and they will learn from what you have shared today. So thank you so much for sharing those thoughts and experience in this space. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Matt.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Jasmeet.
To the audience, thank you so much for joining us today and making this show such a big success. Please feel free to share any feedback, and I look forward to meeting you in the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on the Life Sciences Leadership Podcast. If you loved this episode, please share with friends and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. For more information, visit lifesciencespodcast.com. Until next time.